Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Sebastian Fitness Solutions. When it comes to the topic of squat depth, you'll often find three camps. One that's looking to squat as high as they can possibly get away with. One that's looking to hit just about parallel, and the other that believes ass to grass all the way. In today's video, let's take an objective look at squat depth. What is the minimum depth that qualifies as a legit squat, and how deep you should squat? Coming right up. What is up, everybody? This is Sebastian of Sebastian Fitness Solutions, coming to you from YFC IC Colony in Borivali. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about squat depth, and more specifically, what is the squat depth that you should be aiming for. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, there are typically three types of people when it comes to how deep they squat. You've got one class of people that squats ass to grass, that is as deep as they can physically go. Then you've got the folks who just about aim to hit parallel because that's the benchmark everyone has set, and they just want to shut the critiques up. So they just squat to parallel and that's their aim. And then you've got the third category of people that just don't give a damn and they do quarter and half squats. You know, the ones that we all make fun of. And if you think about it, the analogy we can take here is like similar to the kind of people you'll find in school, where you've always got that class of people, the toppers, who want to aim for full marks all the time. So you've got those guys, which are the ass to grass folks. And then you've got folks who know there's a passing grade, which in this case would be the parallel squat. And they're like, okay, that's all I care about. As long as I pass, I'm happy. And then you've got a class of people who just don't give a damn and they fail every time, because that's exactly what quarter and half squats are. They are fails. Anyway, which of these three approaches is the way to go? Now, while I will tell you that the answer is closer to one of these approaches than the other two, the truth is that neither of them really serve as the ideal. And I'll explain exactly why, but before I do that, let's go into a little bit of detail into these approaches, why people do them in the first place, and why it may not be the best option for you to follow as a general training principle, right? So starting with number 3, which is quarter and half squats, I think most people already know the answer. But anyway, let's look into why people do them. You'll often find two reasons why, or two types of people who do it. The first would be, and the most prominent would be the folks who do it because they're ego lifters, those ego lifting morons who just pile on as much weight as possible on a bar and move that weight for a range of motion that's shorter than their own little friends, if you know what I mean.
0.
But that aside, because these guys are idiots, and by the way, shout out to my friend Elgin from Infinite Elgin Intensity, who does a splendid job roasting these guys for the idiots they are in his series aptly named as Gym Idiots. But again, that aside, the second reason why a lot of people do half and quarter squats is because a lot of them have been made to believe that squatting deep is actually bad for your knees. And believe me, I've been told this as well by physiotherapists and doctors, let alone lay people who really believe that. So a lot of people still believe that squatting deep will hurt their knees. Well, the most comprehensive review of the literature on this subject has not only shown that it's safe to squat deep, but it's actually shown that it's safer to squat deep than it is to do half and quarter squats. In fact, those who do quarter and half squats are actually more likely to get injured in their knees and other places because they end up taking weights that are beyond what their bodies are prepared to handle. They often end up overloading the knee because they take super maximal weights and go for that really short range of motion, which is what ends up straining the knees more than what it's been prepared to handle, along with the soft tissues in there. So if you've been made to believe, and if you're squatting half and quarter range of motion because you think that it's bad for your knees, then please do yourself a favor and stop doing that. Squat all the way down deep. That's better for you. Take an appropriate weight, squat deep rather than doing half and quarter squats. Nothing will happen. In fact, all the research and all the literature proves otherwise. All right? So moving on to the second category of people, that is the parallel squatters. Now, if I were to give a reason why people do this, I would say that, well, it's because that's the benchmark we have set. As a community, we've set that benchmark. At least you must squat till parallel, because apparently that's what. And where does this even come from? Well, I would say that it comes from the sport of powerlifting, because that's where there's a definitive rule on how low you should squat, and that rule isn't really parallel. Rather, the rule over there is that the anterior hip crease, or the crease of your hip on the front, has to be below the top of your knee. And you'll see in the diagram that I've shared right here, that's typically a diagram that you'll see in powerlifting rule books as to how deep a squat should be to be considered as a legit squat. Now remember one thing, that because this is a sport and because this movement is part of the sport, that's why there's a defined rule or a defined limit to how, or I mean at least a benchmark to how low you should squat. That doesn't mean that it applies to anybody else that's not competing in that sport. You know, so for first and foremost, just because that's a rule defined doesn't mean that should be your target, right? It's the same philosophy, the same principle as, you know, the folks who know a passing grade. Well, a passing grade is fine, but it doesn't mean that that's what we should aim for. We should always aim for the best. So don't just aim to pass, aim to go beyond. And there are benefits to squatting with greater range of motion than just that. Because again, greater range of motion will end up creating more tension and more work on the muscle that you're working on, in this case, the quadriceps and the glutes. And you'll get more out of that effort or the more out of that set than you would from shorter range of motion. So if you're not a powerlifter, you don't have to necessarily go by this minimum. You know, and I'm not saying squat higher than that. I'm saying aim to squat lower than that. Don't just hold yourself restricted to this point. But even if you're a powerlifter, I have a case of an argument why you should still aim to train yourself to squat deeper than this. And that would be, see, remember that when you're competing in at a meet, you know, things are not going to go as, you know, it's not going to be as comfortable an environment and as easy as it is in your gym, in your training. So if you have been constantly aiming to hit a certain depth and you just care about hitting that minimum depth in your training, what will happen is oftentimes in meets is when people try to push for PRs, they try to push their boundaries and try to get for more, because again, there's a medal at stake or a prize at stake or just a certain placing at stake. And when you do that, and if you've trained yourself to kind of just barely hit that minimum mark, and then you try and push yourself, what may happen is that you may end up squatting higher than that because it's natural, you know, and in that you may just end up losing that particular attempt. Instead, if you train yourself to squat lower than parallel, what happens is that even if you end up taking a little bit of a challenging weight and you try to push yourself and you end up compromising on range a little bit, you've given enough range, enough leeway or enough of a buffer that you would realize, if you're squatting too high, because the difference would be way too much. Even if you were to squat a little higher than your normal, because you squat so deep normally, you'd be able to get away with it. And the second thing to keep in mind here is that, again, it's the judges' subjective view of what they see in front of them when they call whether your squat gets a white light or a red light. So if you want to leave no doubt in the minds of judges, which oftentimes you'll find calls on YouTube, you'll find videos where people or judges haven't really made the best call, because for us over there it looks fine, but then at the moment for the judge he didn't really see it very clearly. So to leave nothing to doubt, just squat a little bit lower than, or squat as low as you can go comfortably, will allow you to just leave no doubt in the mind of judges and make sure you get that attempt. So long story short, summarizing everything that I've just said for this point, if you're not a powerlifting competitor, you don't need to hold yourself to that minimum grade. First of all, don't think of minimums. Try to get the most out of it. So stop thinking, okay, I just need to hit parallel because, you know, people on the internet won't say stuff to me anymore, or, you know, that's all I need to do. Well, it comes from a sport, and let the people of the sport follow that. But for you, try and get more out of it. If you're a general trainee looking to squat for strength and getting the most out of that squat deeper than parallel, because you're going to get more out of that movement than if you squat parallel. And also, if you're a powerlifting competitor, there is enough reason to want to train for squatting deeper than parallel, so that number one, you train yourself to go well below, or, you know, clear your passing grade easily. That way, even if any time you try to attempt something more than normal and you end up compromising a little bit on range, you will still stay well within or well below that minimum qualification grade. And also, by doing so, you will leave no doubt in the minds of judges that you squat as deep as you should, and then you will not risk yourself getting a red light because of doubt in the mind of judges. And that brings me to point number one from my original list, and that is squatting ass to grass. Now you may wonder, what's wrong with that? Isn't that the ideal? Well, not really. And there are two reasons for that. The first being that, first of all, not everybody is built to squat ass to grass. And the reason for this is there are very different structural and anatomical differences between two different individuals that can make it very easy for one person to squat ass to grass, whereas another may not be able to do it no matter how hard they try. And I've discussed these differences in a separate video titled Why Different People Have to Squat Differently. So if you want to know more about that, it'll be right here. Go ahead and watch it after this video, not right now. Click it afterwards. But anyway, the point is that not everybody is built to squat ass to grass. And someone who's not built to squat ass to grass, that person trying to, you know, fit themselves into that is like fitting a square peg into a circular hole, which just wouldn't work. And in doing so, that person could not only spend a lot of time and wasted effort in the gym, but they could also possibly injure themselves if they are trying to force their body to do something that they are not built to do. So that's one reason why not everybody should go all the way down. And the second reason is, again, now all the way down, astrograph, you can look at it from an absolute sense, and that's what I mean from the first point. But the second point is in a relative sense. Fine, everybody's built differently, but you can go to what is your astrograph, right? Again, not really. Why being so is because if you squat down all the way down to how low you can physically go, which would be a genuine astrograph squat for you, okay? Irrespective of what it looks like on the outside, if that's an astrograph squat for you, even then you shouldn't do that. And that's the reason for that is because now when you sit down all the way down to your physical limit, what happens is right at the end of that range of motion, up until that point when you're sitting down with muscular control. Your muscles are slowing you down and controlling the descent. But at that very end of that range of motion, what you'll realize is that your muscles relax actually, and you end up resting your weight on your joints. It's your joints that are stopping further movement downwards rather than your muscles and muscular control. And that is a bad idea, because at that point, your muscles are no longer handling most of that weight and it's resting completely on your joints, which can be bad for your knees. It could also be bad for your lower back, because oftentimes you'll see that at that bottom position, your butt tends to wink and your spine ends up going out of neutral position, which will cause unnecessary overloading of the spine, which will cause some pain and discomfort, possibly some injury. So should you be squatting all the way down as physically low as you can? No. All right. So now that you've seen all three cases, you know all three cases has a problem of its own. What should you follow? Well, like I said, the answer is very close to one of these options, and that is it is closest to option number one, which is squatting all the way down, except you wouldn't squat all the way down to your physical limit. You would stop just slightly above that. So if, let's say on a scale to 1 to 100, if 100 is your, like I giving the school example, your full marks, then instead of aiming for 100, you'd be aiming for a 98 or a 97 or whatever, you know. Basically, sit down as low as you can physically go without, number one, resting on your joints, resting and relaxing at the bottom, so losing muscular control. And number two, sit all the way down until you can make sure that your heels are planted on the floor and your spine is in neutral position, your butt isn't winking. All right? So when you keep these two conditions in mind and then you sit as low as you can, then what will happen is, number one, you would get the most out of the movement, the most range of motion, and therefore the most bang for your buck for that exercise, for your muscles and strength gain in general, for your connective tissue, everything. But you will avoid the problem with squatting all the way down, and that is overloading your joints, taking tension off the muscles, and causing your butt to wink, causing your spine to go out of desired alignment, or desired position rather. And that's basically it. So the answer to the question, how deep should you squat, is to squat as low as you can go without, or while, sorry, number one, keeping your heels planted on the floor. Number two, making sure that your spine stays neutral. Number three, making sure that you don't feel that you're relaxed at the bottom, you are within muscular control. Your muscles have seized the moment at the bottom, and your muscles can easily reverse the movement without having to overload or rest the weight on the joints. As long as you can do that, squat as low as you can go, and that, my friends, would be the ideal depth for you to squat at. Right? I really hope that you found this video informative, and if you did, don't forget to give this a thumbs up. Thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, click that subscribe button right now and share this video with your friends and gym mates who will learn from this, and especially that friend of yours who doesn't squat deep. Share this video with them so he knows exactly what to do. And that's all the time I have for you today, but until next time, keep learning, keep growing. And make sure that if you're squatting all the way down there, just leave a little bit of a space before you end up sitting completely on your haunches, right? So I want to cut the video right now because I've gone into so many different tangents and I don't know where to fucking close it now anymore. So just stop. And you kind of sit down onto your joints. You kind of rest on your haunches. It's like, you know, a lot of Indians, I'm going to cut that. I was going to say something very stupid there. Okay. Wait, don't cut. Let's roll. Let's cut that. Editor, cut that. I was going to say Indians बैठता है shit करने को, ऐसा कुछ बोलने वाला था मैं. But yeah. Cut that. Okay. All right. Hey, thanks for watching that video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, follow me on my social media. All the links are down below in the description. and finally to watch another video, click right over here.